few orbits later, we have pocket fours on the button. We had a set with him earlier. Maybe we can make another one. I raised to 30. Small blind calls. He's a new player at the table. We're heads up. The flop comes ace 5-3. It's tough to make a set every time, and we obviously don't make one here. We actually make quads. The real flop is ace 4-4. I'm hitting tons of huge hands this session. Poker's lots of fun today. Small blind checks. The board isn't that connected. I don't want to scare off the opponent by betting in case he doesn't have an ace. I check back. The turn is the king of hearts. At least there's some more draws out there. It gets better because the opponent bets 50. Out of respect, take a moment of silence for the opponent since he's drawing dead. This is also a good time for you to hit the like and subscribe buttons. If you do, I'll tell you what happens next. That was very cool of you. Thanks a lot. Okay, I raised to 130. Please don't fold, dude. He doesn't. He makes the call. I hope that he gets whatever he needs, whether it's a heart or some other big card. The river is the 8 of clubs. No draws get there. Not ideal. The small blind checks. It's very unlikely that my opponent will be able to call bet of any sort. I put out 340, hoping that the dude will have an ace and he'll think I'm trying to get him off a chop, or perhaps he'll think that I'm bluffing with a hand like Jack 10 of hearts. I'm gonna let you guys in on a little secret. I'm not bluffing. I have it. Small blind thinks just long enough for it to appear like he has a real decision before folding.
Pre-flop quads on that one.
I'm excited. The table's excited. I'm running good. Here we pick up pocket fours on the button. Under the gun limps in for 5. Under the gun +1 calls. I call. The small blind calls. The big blind checks. We're going 5 ways to the flop. It's queen jack 4 with 2 clubs. We've got bottom set on a coordinated board with multiple opponents. The first 3 players check. Under the gun +1 bets 20. There's too much going on with this board for me to flat with several opponents behind me. I raise to 65. The small blind, big blind, and under the gun all fold. Under the gun +1 isn't so quick to let go. He calls for 45 more. Maybe he has a queen or a flush draw. We're heads up. I'm rooting for a blank. The turn is the 6 of spades. That's a good one. The opponent checks. I want to try and get his whole stack, but I have no idea how much he's playing since his hands are blocking his chips from my view. This is when things really get interesting.
Mind lifting up your hands, please? Can't see how many chips you have.
As the opponent lifts up his hands to about eye level, he holds on to his cards the entire time and briefly exposes what I see as a red face card. I don't see exactly what it is, but I feel really weird about the situation. I'm conflicted as to whether or not I should say something. I know that the opponent is likely drawing dead since he either has a queen or a jack, probably not both because he might have re-raised on the flop with top 2 pair on a draw-heavy board. He could also have something like king 10, but he'll never have a flush draw. I have a huge hand and don't want to waste it by letting the opponent know that I have at least some clue as to the strength of what he's got. If another club comes out, for instance, I can still value bet because I don't have to be worried about under the gun +1 having a flush. That's not how I want to be winning extra money, but at the same time, I did nothing wrong in this situation, and poker is a game about making the fewest mistakes. Him bringing his cards between 1.5 to 2 feet off the table so that they're visible for everyone to see is a pretty big mistake. I bet 75 to ensure that I can get called from a queen, jack, or king 10. I didn't have to bet too much to protect against clubs. I strongly would have preferred him not to give me any information though. I feel very odd as the opponent calls. The river is the jack of spades, giving us a full house. He'll either have top pair, trip jacks, or miss straight draw. There's some tiny chance that he has a better full house, but I almost completely ruled that out earlier. He checks and has 300 in his stack. I consider jamming. That's a little too greedy, and sometimes opponents are intimidated by the words all in. Instead, I bet 250, somewhat hoping for a fold. The opponent immediately calls. I turn over the full house. The player looks at his cards. Part of me wants him to somehow have a better full house. He doesn't. He shows that he has jack 5 offsuit for trips. I'm not sure why he limped in with that hand. I have no idea why he called my raise on the flop, but I don't feel good about the situation. If I hadn't seen a card flash on the turn, I certainly would have bet larger than 75 to protect against flush draws, and maybe he would have folded at that point rather than call and drill the worst river card in the deck for him. He can't fold to a large sizing once he makes trips. I don't really know what to do. My stack is up to 2,700. I'm winning a few hundred on the night. I just don't feel right about it.
Are you okay with being on the vlog? I have a YouTube channel. What's your name? Adam, I'm gonna give you that last bet back, dude. There you go. When you lifted up your hands, when I asked you to, I saw one of your cards. I didn't see exactly what it was, but I saw it was like a red face card. And it made me feel weird, so I just feel like you should have that back.
I appreciate it. I'll take it.
Yeah. Good.
That might change as we're dealt pocket fours in the cutoff of what's currently a 5-handed game. I raised to 100. The button is a pro from the UK that I played with one other time at Aria in the uncapped 5-10-20 vlog a few episodes back. He calls in position. The Under the Gun straddler calls. He's about the only person left in the game that I feel like I have a significant edge on. I'm hoping that the game will fill up with some other rec players, but I also don't mind testing my skills a little if that doesn't happen. 3 of us are seeing the flop. It comes Jack 8-4 rainbow. We've got bottom set and multiple opponents. Under the Gun checks. I might check with top set on this board. Having a set of 4s makes it more likely that one of the other 2 players in the hand will have top pair or something else that they can call a bet with. I make it 160. The button has seen some vlogs and knows that just because I'm continuing with aggression, I don't necessarily have anything. He puts me to the test by raising to 400. Unlike in my Spanish test during my freshman year of high school, this is a test I'm going to pass, and I won't be copying any of Greg Perry's answers. Under the Gun folds. I consider flatting, but because I'm bluffing a lot more these days, I want to keep my aggressive plays balanced and consistent when I have strong hands too. I re-raise to 1,000. In a big pot for 600 more, the button will probably only fold his complete air. He folds this time. The button is a friendly guy who would later tell me that he tried to bluff me with King 10 of clubs, which is nothing except 1 over and some backdoor draws. If I knew that's what he had in the moment, I would have flatted his raise, although he had a lot of cards that would have helped him improve on the turn. Very little happens until we pick up pocket 4s at 455, run for 1800 by this point, and have 1700 in front of us. Under the Gun limps in, the hijack calls, the cutoff raises to 50. I call, the big blind calls, Under the Gun calls, the hijack folds. We're going 4 ways to the flop out of position. It comes Queen 4-3 rainbow. We've got middle set with multiple opponents. Unfortunately, it checks through. The turn is the 5 of hearts. There's more and more to be worried about on this board. We can't allow it to check through again. I bet 130. The big blind and Under the Gun fold. Our last hope is the initial pre-flop raiser in the cutoff. She calls. It's tough to put her on a hand after she checked back the flop. She may just have a draw. The river is the 9 of diamonds. It's about as blank as it gets on this board. My opponent is a solid player who doesn't bluff frequently. If she did bluff a lot, I might check to induce a bet from missed draws. Fairly often, I'll have missed draws, and I'll fire a big river bet with air. Here I make it 550 as a slight overbet to balance the times when I'm bluffing. If my opponent checks back a queen on the flop for pot control, or even if she has a hand like pocket jacks, she still might be able to find a call. Cutoff doesn't think it over for too long before folding. She likely didn't have much. Perhaps she bricked a straight draw, heart draw, or both. With this win, we're up about 250 on the day. A few hands later, Harp opens up Under the Gun with blinds at 6K, 12K. So he opens 25K. Player in middle position calls. I'm in the big blind, pocket 4s. I flat. Flop comes 4-4 deuce. I check. Harp bets 30K, player in middle position calls. I'm like not quite sure what I want to do. I decide I'm gonna go ahead and raise tiny. So I raise to 70K. Under the Gun folds, middle position player calls. I figure he has like a middling pocket pair, like from 8s to jacks. Turn is the 7 of spades, I believe. It's a 7. And I actually bet 60K, so I bet even smaller than I did on the flop. I just really wanted to keep him in there. And he tank calls again. River is a king. He is about, I think, a little bit less than 200K in chips. And I just ripped it in, and then he tanked for a few minutes and ended up folding. I showed him the quads, and he had pocket 8s. And so got a good amount of value there. In this one, we've got pocket 4s on the button. We're 5-handed now as Christian Soto has entered the game. Christian does some great work commentating for the Hustlers live stream. He's a well-known cash game player. I raised to 50. Christian has only been here a few minutes, yet he's already looking to make a big splash. He 3-bets to 300 from the Under the Gun straddle. We won't be folding any pocket pairs after we open from the button. I call for 250 more. We're heads up in position. The flop comes King Queen 4 with 2 diamonds. We've got bottom set on a coordinated board against an aggressive pro. The opponent down bets at 200. If I were out of position, I'd play this fast and put in the check raise right now. Since we're in position, we can ensure that the turn won't check through. Even though there are a lot of bad cards that could potentially come out, I make the call to disguise our hand strength and possibly keep the opponent's bluffs in. If a blank comes out, we could be set up to win a big pot. The turn is the deuce of clubs. It's beautiful seeing that. Under the Gun probably doesn't have a strong top pair or better because he checks. Hands like ace king and king jack will continue firing, so will king queen and better sets. I'd expect most drawing hands to continue firing as well, like flush draws, ace 10, ace jack, jack 10 suited. Really feels like we're up against an ace queen type of combo. Maybe queen jack or queen 10 suited, or pocket jacks. There's no way we're allowing our opponent to see a free card. We bet 600 for value. It doesn't appear that the opponent is considering putting in the check raise. He just calls on a board with a lot of draws. Let's just see the 7 of spades one time. Nope. The river is the 9 of diamonds, completing both straight and flush draws that were present on the flop. The opponent checks. While the river card is scary, it's mostly only bad because it makes getting paid by a hand like ace queen much more difficult. Remember, I already ruled out the majority of drawing hands once Christian checked the turn. Also, going back to the idea once again that in short-handed games, I'll be betting lighter and more often for value with the expectation of getting called lighter. We have a clear betting situation. I make it 1700 to go if Christian doesn't want to wait until the vlog comes out to see what I've got. A shove wouldn't be something that I'd like to see, but it requires some huge cojones from the opponent since I'm going to have a lot of flushes, straights, 2-pair and set combos after betting turn and river. My bluffs will mostly just be ace-jack offsuit hands that contain a diamond or a hand like 10-9 of clubs. After about 25 seconds, the opponent makes the call, we turn over our set, it's the best hand, we win a big pot to get us unstuck, but no amount of profit is safe in this game since the buy-in is uncapped and the stakes regularly get raised as players agree to it. This one feels great to win though, particularly against a talented opponent. Be sure to check Christian out the next time that he's doing stream commentary. We break even for 3 hours before picking up pocket fours onto the gun. In a game with lots of 3-betting, I may just fold small pocket pairs from early position. There hasn't been much of that at this table though. I raised to 30. We don't get through a single player. Under the gun +1 calls. The middle position player wants to get in there. He calls. We're going 3 ways to the flop out of position. It comes jack 10-4 with 2 clubs. We've got bottom set on a coordinated flop with multiple opponents. There's no need to slow play a hand this strong in this type of situation. I bet 60. Should be able to get called or raised by plenty of worse holdings, including 2-pair, top pair, flush draws, straight draws, and combo draws. Under the gun +1 indeed raises to 160. Mostly this is great, but since we can have sets of jacks and 10s in our range, as well as jack 10 suited and all the overpairs, it's a little alarming that one of our opponents is raising us even though we're the pre-flop aggressor. We bet into 2 other players. The raiser has another opponent behind him who could have sets of jacks, 10s, and 4s, plus jack 10 in his range as well. Middle position player folds. There's so many cards we won't want to see that complete flush and straight draws. We're going to continue trying to get as much money in now as possible. If under the gun +1 set over set us, so be it. I raised to 500 with plans to call a jam in case we're up against jack 10 or a hand like king queen of clubs. The opponent has 1350 total. He's not afraid to play for all of it.
Come on.
All it?
You have jacks or 10s?
Nope. As the dealer puts out the king of diamonds on the turn, we see in the bottom left that our opponent has jack 10 offsuit for 2-pair. With only 1 card to come and 4 outs for under the gun +1, we're in about as good a shape as possible to win a $3,000 pot. We just need to keep the dealer from devastating us by putting out a jack or 10 on the river. Don't you do it, dealer. Don't you dare do it. She puts out the 7 of hearts. It's a safe one that gives us the victory. I'm glad to get the win. Spraggy always has something to chirp about though.
Couldn't have gone to a worse guy either.
We get a count just to confirm that we've got the opponent covered. We do. After several hours without anything too interesting happening, we win a huge pot to essentially double up and gain some momentum. Next we've got pocket fours in the small blind. The straddle's on. Our old buddy Paul raises to 300 from middle position. It's always fun to get involved in pots against him. I call. We're heads up out of position. The flop comes king 4 deuce rainbow. We've got our first set of the day. I check to induce a bet. He doesn't bite. He checks back. The turn is another king. We improve to a full house. There will be no more free cards. I bet 400. If the opponent has a middle to high pocket pair below a king, he should actually like the second king coming out because it reduces the amount of kings that I'll have. The opponent calls. The river is the 10 of spades. It's a little scary because the opponent could have pocket 10s, but we can't be too worried about that. I've shown plenty of bluffs today, including the one with 7 deuce earlier against Paul. I go with a large sizing of 1700. It should get paid off lighter because my credibility is lower than Amber Heard's. We get some good news from the other side of the table. The vote. Our big bet gets paid off. The opponent shows that he got there on the river with a pair of 10s. I was having a hard time figuring out how he called the turn bet with just a 10 in his hand. Then later, he'd say that he was playing the Brunson, which ended up costing him a couple thousand. I get switched to the main game where we look down at pocket fours on the button. The player in middle position raises to 30. He's got a big stack. It's really too big. He should be spreading it around. I call to set mine while we're in position. It's down to heads up. The flop comes 5-4 deuce rainbow. We've got middle set on a coordinated board. The opponent checks, knowing that I could definitely have some sets and overpairs in my range. I can't let him see a free card if he's holding an ace. I bet 30. Though I haven't played with the middle position player before, I get the sense that he's a good aggressive pro. He lives up to that description as he raises to 140. I'm not buying that he really has a set of fives or a straight like he's representing, but if he does, there's no need for us to re-raise while we're behind. It's a lot more likely that he has air, and I want to keep his bluffs in, and even hands like aces that he may think that he's check raising with for value. I call for 110 more, rooting for the board to pair. The turn is the 8 of spades, so now 7-6 makes it straight, and pocket 8s improves to beat us too. The opponent doesn't slow down. He goes with over a pot-sized bet of 400. We're going to stick with the same philosophy that we had on the flop. There's no real need to raise if the opponent has us beat or is drawing slim. I call again. Another deuce would be terrific. The river is the 9 of spades instead. The backdoor flush draw gets there, and pocket 9s is another hand that improves to beat us. If the middle position player somehow has the best hand, he deserves to win a big pot. My plan is to at least call a bet of almost any sizing. I'm mostly hoping that the opponent doesn't have an ace-5 of spades type of combo that overtook the lead from us on the river. The opponent bets 900. That's a reasonable amount. There's no need to put in a superfluous amount of chips in there when there's a decent chance the pot is coming back to us anyway. I call with one blue chip. The opponent reveals that he was making an elaborate play with ace-6 of diamonds. We show our set of fours. Playing patiently and not re-raising on the flop wins us an additional $1,300. Sometimes all you have to do is lend someone a shovel. They're more than willing to dig a hole for themselves. Next we've got ace-jack offsuit on the button with the straddle on. A player in middle position raises to 70. He's a local pro named Zach, who I've played with a handful of times, but never while filming for the vlog. This is an interesting situation because if I had ace-jack suited, I'd be more inclined to flat, but since it's offsuit, it doesn't play as well post-flop, particularly multi-way, and if we get 4-bet, we have an easier decision to fold. I re-raise to 210 to hopefully win this pre-flop or minimally isolate the initial pre-flop raiser. Middle position player calls for 140 more. We're heads up with position on the opponent. The flop comes king 8-3 rainbow. Once again, we've got very little. The opponent checks. King high boards will still typically be better for us. We can have kings, aces, and ace-king that the opponent will rarely or never have. I'm going to bet 100% of my range. Generally, the higher the frequency is that we're betting, the lower we'll go with our bet size. I down bet to 150. The opponent isn't going anywhere just yet. Perhaps he has a king or better. He calls. The turn is the ace of hearts, giving us top pair. The opponent checks. If he has a medium pocket pair that didn't improve, he won't be able to call a bet anyway, and hands containing a king won't like that card either, so it'll be tough for us to get value out of worse holdings. If he has a set of 8s or 3s, we're way behind, and there's still some chance that he could have ace-queen that'll have us in rough shape. I check back for pot control and to induce bluffs. The river is the 4 of spades. It's mostly a blank. The opponent checks. We should have the best hand, but I'm still having a hard time thinking about worse hands that'll call our bet given the action. There won't be too many worse aces that the opponent will have, and I don't know if the opponent will call with second pair or worse. I check back to ensure that we don't get re-raised and have to make a difficult decision. The opponent shows king-queen suited. We show him that we got lucky turn to win the pot. The middle position player probably would have called a small or medium-sized bet on the river, so we don't get max value, but we do get unstuck. Zach lets us know that he's disappointed to be 0 for 1 on the vlog.
My vlog debut didn't go well. It's not how I wanted this.
Yeah.
Here we've got pocket 4s in the cutoff. A newer player at the table limps in for 10. He's got a short stack. Remember guys, if you're not in the blinds and you're first in the pot, be sure to raise rather than limp. I raised to 40 in order to punish the limper. Rodrigo's on the button. He 3-bets to 140 with his big stack. The middle position limper folds. We've got set potential. I call for 100 more, creating a dicey situation for us because we're playing a big pot against a good player from out of position. The flop comes 8-5 deuce with 2 hearts. We don't improve, but there are a lot of cards on the turn that'll give us a draw. I check to the button. This isn't a flop that's great for his 3-bet range, yet he fires for 150. It's a half pot sizing. If we have pocket 4s without a heart, we're supposed to be folding. With the heart, we're supposed to mix in calls and raises. I try to subtly check for a heart. Good players will recognize that I won't have a set of 5s or deuces if I'm checking for a heart, because the 5 of hearts and the deuce of hearts are accounted for. And I won't have 2 hearts very often either when I look at my cards a second time. Any heart, ace, 3, 4, 6, or 7 gives us a draw or a set. I call to see if we can hit one of those. The turn is the 7 of diamonds, we pick up the gutter, and it's right in the range of cards that we'll have, so it's good overall for us if we try to represent a big hand. Remember, I waited all the way until the river in a 3-bet pot to make a move when we actually did have a set, so I can definitely have some sets right now. I check, the opponent doesn't feel comfortable firing again on this board, he checks, the button may just have an ace-high type of hand, but he could also be checking back with overpairs like he did with 9s earlier in a similar spot when we lost with 6-4 of clubs. The river is the king of clubs, it's certainly a better card for the 3-betters range and we both know it. I check to the button, we've got to wait a long time to see what Rodrigo's going to do. A full minute goes by and still no action, so someone else at the table finally speaks up.
What the hell's going on here? What's going on?
I checked.
Come on. Come on.
You checked?
Yeah.
Oh, sorry.
I knew something was going on.
Now that Rodrigo realizes it's his turn to act and the anticipation is built up as much as it could possibly be, the opponent slides in a model of the Leaning Tower of Pisa that you can purchase yourself for $300. I know this river card is good for him, and he knows it. He wouldn't bet this with a pocket pair like 9s, 10s, jacks, or queens, so he's really only saying that he has aces, kings, ace-king, and possibly a small amount of other hands containing a king. I know that he wants to get on the vlog. I'm having a hard time believing that he conveniently rivered top pair. We played somewhat passively so far, possibly inducing a bluff from another ace-high or queen-high type of hand if he doesn't believe that he's good, but knows that we'll have a hard time calling a bet after checking 3 times. I can't help myself. I make the crying call. Obviously, the opponent has ace-9 of spades for nada. We show him the pocket 4s. Told you earlier that we'd beat Rodrigo with a pair of 4s. You didn't believe me, but I made it happen. Let me know in the comments section if you're a liar and predicted that we were going to win this hand after seeing the river bet. A rare hero call works for us. Rodrigo gets what he wants to. Well, sorta.
You finally made the vlog, right?
No,
I made it the worst way possible.
I was going to say, that's why I don't want to do it.
Calling light doesn't always result in us winning a big pot. In fact, usually the opposite's true, so it's nice to take this one down. We're up well over 2,000 now.